Judge H. Lee Sarakin, the Honorable Judge H. Lee Sarakin, is and was the only judge in the whole wide world who would have made the decision that he did and have that decision upheld unanimously all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Judge Sarakin is an old-fashioned lover of liberty, the kind of man Americans used to love. One man standing alone who speaks the truth. Years following Judge Sarakin's courageous decision to release me, there were 13 vicious attempts to overturn his case, his decision. My case was and is the longest litigated case in the history of New Jersey. And Judge Sarakin had to pay the price for that. People say that they love what is right. They just hate who is right. People say they love what is good. They just hate those who are good. People say they love the truth. They just hate who speaks it. But on November 8th of 1985, which became my new date of birth, I'll be 22 years old come November, I received the most precious birthday gift any human being can ever receive on this earth. With that one exception, of course, of the gift of life itself. My life was given back to me. Judge Sarakin saved my life. I was on my last legs. This was the end of the line for me. After this, there would be no more. After serving nearly 20 excruciating years in prison for something that I didn't do, just narrowly escaping the electric chair, I became the proud recipient of a writ of habeas corpus. You see, a good lawyer knows the law, but a great lawyer knows the judge. I was going to be the judge to hear my appeal. I read every one of his then 96 published opinions. And I found in his writings the simplicity of Homer, the logic of Aristotle, the satire of Voltaire, the citizenship of Paine, the fire of Nietzsche, the beauty of Hugo, the charm of Ingersoll, and the intensity of Rand. And we began to formulate our briefs in this fashion in order to reach this giant of a man. You see this, ladies and gentlemen? You see this? These seemingly insignificant, torn and tattered pages represent a writ of habeas corpus. I consider this to be absolutely sacred, and I never leave home without it. Way back in 1868, as the judge told us, the Supreme Court of the United States of America called the Great Writ the best and only sufficient defense of personal freedom. In my case, on that fateful day, the Honorable Judge H. Lee Sarakin ruled that my conviction was based simply upon an appeal to racism rather than reason, and on concealment rather than disclosure. The court went on to say, as we saw in the clip, but as good as Rod Steiger was, he could not hold the robes of the bald eagle I saw on that day. But the court went on to say, to permit convictions to stand, which has as its foundation appeals to racial prejudice and the withholding of evidence critical to the defense, is to commit a violation of the Constitution as heinous as the crimes for which this defendant was tried and convicted. Judge Sarakin ordered my immediate release. He said he was only doing his job. Only doing his job. Well, in 1985, the year in which this petition was filed, 8,500 petitions were filed that year. 8,500. And only 3% of those petitions were successful. And he said he was only doing his job. It looks like to me that nobody else was working. Without this great writ, ladies and gentlemen, without this great writ, I would have, like so many other wrongly convicted people, languished, wasted away, and died behind bars. This simple document, these few words, it is ordered that the petition of Reuben Carter for writ of habeas corpus hereby is granted. These few words gave me back my life and gave precious hope to so many others. You know, in Alaska, almost every year, in July, on the Kenai River, when the salmon are running, there's vistas in Alaska where you can see the saltwater ocean and the fresh water of the Kenai come together. And you can see the beluga whales chasing the salmon as the salmon are going upstream to spawn. One year I latched onto a monster, what felt like a monster, on my rod. I mean, this thing was pulling me all over the place. Up the Kenai River, down the Kenai River, from shore to shore. 59 minutes I fought this monster. And when I pulled in the board, I immediately thought of Judge Sarah. If it wasn't for you, Judge, this great fish might still be alive today. If it wasn't for you. That's what his enemies of justice would have said. Had I come out of that prison full of anger and bitterness and hatred and perhaps committed a real crime, they would have hung Judge Sarakin from the highest tree. They would have climbed on top of the highest mountain and shouted all over the world. If it wasn't for you, Judge, this would have never happened. Well, I didn't come out of prison full of hate. But if it wasn't for you, Judge, defending innocent people from wrongful convictions would not have become my life's work. If it wasn't for you, Judge, I would not be on the board of directors of the Southern Center for Human Rights in Atlanta, Georgia. If it wasn't for you, Judge, I would not be on the board of directors of Death Penalty Focus in California. If it wasn't for you, Judge, I would not be on the board of directors of the Alliance for Prison Justice in Boston. Had it not been for you, Judge, I would not have been the executive director and co-founder of AIDWIC, the Toronto-based association in defense of the wrongly convicted. If it wasn't for you, Judge, if it wasn't for you, Judge, I would not have been invited to the White House to meet with the president to save two of our clients' lives in Vietnam who were scheduled for execution if it wasn't for you, Judge. I would not have had the honor and the great privilege of sharing the same stage with the great Nelson Mandela in Australia at the first World Reconciliation Conference if it wasn't for you, Judge. I would not have had the pleasure of addressing the General Assembly of the United Nations on the preservation of the writ of habeas corpus and to get rid of that devilish death penalty if it wasn't for you, Judge. All of these organizations, of which I am a part, would not have been able to save the many lives that we have saved. Lives that were moments away from execution, away from death. Lives of people who have spent 10, 20, 30 years in prison for crimes they did not commit. If it wasn't for you, Judge, I would not be a double doctor of laws. I would still be number 45472 in the state penitentiary if it wasn't for you, Judge. I would not have been the first person in all of pugilistic history to receive the middleweight championship belts outside of the ring. If it wasn't for you, Judge, Denzel Washington would not have a if it wasn't for you. You are the only reason that I am standing here today. Because you had the courage and the tenacity and the chutzpah to do the right thing. If it wasn't for you, Judge. Judge Saragin understands one important thing. He understands that the love of truth is the spirit of man. If it wasn't for you, Judge, I would not be here today. Now come on here and let me hug you.